So, you want to get into GregTech. There are various different mod packs that use GregTech, so I decided to make this video to make it easier for beginners to get into GregTech. GregTech is a mod that completely overhauls Minecraft to be more realistic. The goal of GregTech is to create a large factory in which you produce every single material in the game and progressively become more powerful by unlocking better materials and producing more energy. Starting in the Stone Age, you will barely be able to survive until you get your first steam machines and eventually reach electricity. GregTech's huge tech tree has 9 or 15, depending on the version, tiers of electricity, with each of them getting harder and more complex. There are 2 major versions of GregTech: GregTech Community Unofficial, which is on 1.12.2, and GregTech 5 Unofficial, which is on 1.7.10. On 1.12.2, there are 2 important GregTech mod packs, the GregTech Community Pack and Nami Factory. GregTech Community Pack is a pack for people that are new to GregTech and want to try it out for the first time. The guide explains everything in detail so that you can easily follow along. It only contains a few important mods like GregTech and Applied Energistics 2 for automation. Nami Factory is a tech mod pack focused on automating large-scale factories. It doesn't contain any magic mods or mobs, and it can be played on peaceful if you want. Nami Factory skips the Steam Age so you can get into the Electric Age as soon as you start playing. It will quickly gain access to resource generation methods like deep mob learning for infinite diamond/basic resources, and Applied Energistics 2. On 1.7.10, there are also 2 major GregTech mod packs, those being GregTech New Horizons and GregTech Impact. GregTech New Horizons has been custom built to provide the hardest and most painful GregTech experience possible. It has a ton of tech and magic mods that are all integrated into the GregTech progression. The early game is incredibly painful, with multiple machines taking 4 to 6 hours to get at the start. It also has infernal mobs and special mobs that can kill you in one hit as soon as you start playing. However, the quest book is really good, and if you ever get stuck, there is usually an alternative way to get most items. Impact GregTech is a Russian GregTech 1.7.10 pack. It is much easier than GregTech New Horizons, and it also has no magic mods or unfair mobs. Impact can also be played on peaceful mode. Sadly, the authors did not write a guidebook because they think that the pack is only played by GregTech experts. I still think it's good though. There is also GregTech 6. This version of GregTech is the one that is still being maintained by GregoriousT. But the gameplay of GregTech 6 is quite different from the other versions of GregTech, so it isn't recommended for new players. This video will help you with getting started on GregTech Community Edition Unofficial. Before starting, make sure that you're playing on a mod pack or that you have installed just enough items for checking recipes and the one probe for knowing which blocks are which. The first thing that you need to do is search for materials. You will need copper, tin, coal, redstone, and iron to begin. You will also need a few stacks of sand and clay and a good supply of sugarcane. In GregTech, ores spawn in extremely large veins. Veins are arranged in a 3x3 chunk layout. A single ore vein can contain over 1,000 blocks of up to 4 ores. When you find one, you need to bookmark it in your minimap mod of choice. If you can't find an ore, you can look it up in JEI. Most ores are named after real-life ores, which you can see the uses of in JEI. The info page will tell you where it spawns and at which height. Tin ores can be found in cassiterite veins. Redstone spawns in redstone veins. Copper is in chalcopyrite, chalcocite, malachite, bornite, or tetrahedrite veins in the nether. Diamonds can be found in diamond veins deep down. Iron can be found in magnetite veins, limonite veins, and copper veins. And coal is just normal coal. To smelt your metals, you will need a furnace fuel. Since wood is very bad for smelting, you need charcoal or coal. You can get charcoal by making a coke oven, a 3x3x3 hollow cube made of coke bricks with a coke oven controller in the front center block. You can check the formation in JEI. Start smelting all your ores. Ore processing is available fairly early on, but it is not recommended until HV. And ores are very abundant, so you probably won't need ore processing till later anyway. You need to make a mortar with 5 stone and 2 metal ingots. Keep in mind that only a few types of metals work in the creation of the mortar. Smash copper and tin into dust and combine 3 copper dust and 1 tin dust to make 3 bronze dust. Bronze is the main material for the first tier of GregTech, the Steam Age. Before you start making machines, you need to get yourself some iron tools. You need a hammer for plates, a file for rods and screws, a saw for bolts, a wrench for machine casings, a wire cutter for wires, and a screwdriver. It is also recommended that you make a mining hammer for faster mining and an axe for faster tree felling. Make some bronze plates with the hammer and use them with bricks to make a small coal boiler. Insert lots of water and coal to make steam. You will need infinite water to get a lot of steam. Thankfully, GregTech provides its own solution with the primitive water pump. You need lots of wood and rubber to make the water pump. It is a multi-block, so check JEI for the structure. The output hatch is where water will be pumped out, and you can change where the output side is by using a wrench. Now that you have steam, you can use pipes to move it around. You can also make steam machines. After completing the recipe, steam machines will blow off steam from one side, so make sure to use a wrench to make sure that side isn't blocked off. Additionally, make sure your boilers are filled with water at all times. Don't walk over GregTech pipes with steam in them because steam is hot and will hurt you. The machines that you should make are an alloy smelter for making red alloy, a macerator for doubling ores, a forge hammer for making 2 plates out of 3 ingots, and a compressor for making blocks and compressed fire kiln. You should also upgrade your crafting table to a crafting station. The next step will require a few hundred clay. You will make a primitive blast furnace. Smelt some clay to make bricks, then smash the clay and the bricks with a mortar or steam macerator, which has better item to dust ratio, and mix the dust to make fire clay dust. Compress that to make the compressed fire clay, and smelt that to get fire clay bricks. It's now time to build our PBF. Make your primitive blast furnace bricks, and look at JEI for the formation of the multi-block. Insert iron and coal, charcoal, or coal coke to make steel. There is also raw iron that is tougher than regular iron. You can make it from smelting iron chunks in a furnace and recombining the chunks into ingots. Making steel using raw iron instead of iron is faster. And that's how you get started with the Steam Age in GregTech Community Edition Unofficial. I hope you enjoyed, and if this video made you interested, you can download GregTech Community Pack through the link in the description. The GregTech energy system can be quite confusing for new players, so I decided to make a guide. In GregTech Community Edition Unofficial, the energy unit, or EU, is transported through direct connection, wires, or cable. GregTech energy consists of voltage and amperage. Voltage is the amount of energy sent each tick, ranging anywhere from 32 EU to the maximum of 2.147 billion EU. Amperage is the amount of packages of a voltage sent each tick. So for example, 128 EU per tick at LV would be 4 amps of LV, not 1 amp of MV, which is 128 EU per tick. You can think of amps as being energy packets that are sent from the generator, optionally through a wire or cable, to the closest machine. A low voltage GregTech generator will output 32 EU per tick, which is the voltage in 1 amp. If you supply too many amps to a wire, it will burn. If you supply too high of a voltage to a machine, it will explode. Note that the machines can accept only 1 amp unless stated otherwise, so it is safe to feed 2 or more amps to them. Some blocks such as battery buffers or energy hatches will consume more amps depending on how many they say, so you'll need to check their tooltips. Power loss works by volts per amp per block. So an LV wire with a loss of 2 per block will be supplying 20 EU per tick to adjacent machines after only 6 blocks of distance. To optimize power usage, you should reduce energy loss. For that, you should insulate your wires to get cables. Not only do cables have less energy loss, but they will also not electrocute you. The best type of wire is a superconductor. They are more expensive to craft, but they come with 0 loss. That means they do not need to be insulated because they cannot electrocute you and they have no need for reduced energy loss. If you have 4 LV generators, they will output 32 volts and 4 amps together. 32 volts and 4 amps, which is a total of 128 EU per tick, is not the same as MV, which has amp sizes of 128 EU per tick. You can also use a transformer to turn 4 amps of X into 1 amp of Y, and 1 amp of Y into 4 amps of X, where X is 1 voltage tier below Y. For example, you could turn 4 amps of LV into 1 amp of MV, or 1 amp of MV into 4 amps of LV. If you need to store energy, you will need battery buffers. Each battery in the buffer adds 2 amps in and 1 amp out. so when you put 3 batteries in the buffer, it will accept 6 amps at most and give 3 amps at most. Buffers can have different inventory sizes, but you don't have to fill them completely. Finally, one more machine that might be useful is a diode, not to be confused with the crafting component. It allows energy to flow in only one direction and can limit the amperage throughput to up to 16 amps. Diodes might be a useful safety measure when you have a central power line and some branches to which you need to supply only a portion of your total energy. There are multiple ways GregTech electric machines can explode. If you've enabled it in the configs, rain will make your electric machines explode if the rain hits the machine, so put your machinery under a proper roof. Wires without insulation will catch fire when they touch rain, while both wires and cables will catch fire if they're supplied with more amps than they're rated for. Fire will blow up your machines if it gets too close. As mentioned before, supplying a voltage tier that is higher than the machine's voltage tier will also make it. GregTech progression is based on making more energy so you can tier up and unlock better machines and multi-blocks. In base GregTech, the progression has 9 tiers, from LV to UV, low voltage to ultimate voltage. The add-on called Gregoriosity Science will add 6 new voltage tiers on top of the pre-existing 9, going all the way up to max tier, or 2.147 billion EU per tick. So that's all of the energy mechanics in GregTech Community Edition Unofficial. Thank you for watching, and if you like this video, you can check out more guides in the playlist linked in the description. You can also download GregTech Community Edition Unofficial through the link in the description. Fluid pipes transport fluids between machines for you. Remember that both liquids and gases are considered fluids in Minecraft. Each pipe has a certain throughput in liters per tick and a temperature limit. For example, steam will burn wooden pipes. Note that 1 liter is equivalent to 1 millibucket. Each material has several sizes for pipes. The bigger the pipe, the higher the throughput. For example, a normal bronze fluid pipe transfers 120 liters per tick. It also has a 1200 liter internal buffer, while a small bronze fluid pipe transfers 40 liters per tick and has a buffer of 800 liters. And a huge bronze fluid pipe transfers 480 liters per tick and has a capacity of 9600 liters. Regular GregTech fluid pipes can only transport 1 fluid at a time, while quadruple fluid pipes can transfer 4 different types of fluids, and non-opal fluid pipes can transfer 9 different types. This is very useful for compact setups. Non-opal fluid pipes might be useful in EV age for handling the many distillation tower outputs you'll be dealing with. The main reason to use quadruple or non-opal pipes is that you cannot put 2 different fluids in one pipe network. Hot fluids like steam, polyethylene, and titanium tetrachloride can't be transported in one pipes. You will need to check the temperature rating of the pipes first and compare it to the temperature of the fluids. If the temperature of a fluid is greater than the temperature limit of a pipe, it will be destroyed. Remember that GregTech pipes are not laggy individually, but they can add up if you have thousands of them. You may notice that some fluids say they are acidic. This means that many fluid pipes will not be able to transport them safely. At MV, the cheapest pipes for acid transportation are probably gold, with the more expensive vanadium steel or chrome pipes taking 2nd place and 3rd place. You have 2 options for acid storage around this point: glass vials or super tanks. Item pipes are a simple but very effective way to move items around, but they have throughput limitations. Higher tier pipes provide ridiculously large throughput. Pipes do not pull, but they will push any item inserted into them to other connected inventories, prioritizing the closest first. Polyvinyl chloride, or PVC, item pipes also have the highest throughput available for early to mid-game. Cobalt pipes might be a good alternative. Each pipe's destination will have a routing value calculated, which is the sum of all routing values of the individual pipes to that destination. Whichever destination has the lowest routing value will be the one selected for insertion. Restrictive pipes typically have the lowest priority for insertion due to their higher routing value. Placing pipes connects them only to the block they were placed against. To open more connections, use your wrench on the grid. Shift right-clicking one side of the pipe will make a one-way connection. In other words, items or fluids will only move from the pipe in that direction and not backwards. For example, it might be useful if you have a large network of item pipes to collect outputs in a single chest. That works with both item and fluid pipes. And that's all you need to know about GregTech pipes and fluids. For more info about interactions, watch the video on covers. If you want to learn more, you can look at the GregTech Guides playlist in the description, and subscribe so you get more Greg per second. GregTech covers are ways to give your machines extra behavior without using any extra block space. Covers are placed by right-clicking the item on a face of a machine, and they can be removed by using a crowbar. Opening a cover is done by shift-right-clicking it with an empty hand. If you cannot physically reach the cover, you can shift-right-click with a screwdriver using the grid that allows you to access all faces of a machine. Voltages are irrelevant when placing covers on machines. So, for example, you can safely put an LV conveyor module on HV machines and vice versa. The conveyor module, when placed on a machine, will transfer items to the block adjacent to the face it's on. You can configure it to import or export items from the machine or item pipe you place it on. To distinguish between export and import mode, you should look at the cover from the perspective of the machine on which you placed it. For example, if you place it on a macerator and set the mode to import, it will automatically input items, while export will eject them. On the other hand, if you place the cover on the pipe adjacent to the machine and set the mode to import, the pipe will automatically get items from the machine output slots. This item has a special interaction with item pipes to enable round-robin mode, which equally distributes items from the import inventory between each output inventory. It can also accept item filters, which we will talk about later. The robot arm is a more advanced conveyor module. It lets you transfer items in specific batches at specific rates, or keep a certain amount of items stocked in an inventory. You should use conveyor modules when transferring bulk quantities, and robot arms when transferring exact quantities. For example, in the recipe for stainless steel dust, the machine will clog with the more common input dust and prevent chrome from being input if a robot arm is not utilized to control the flow of inputs. Direct transfer, with no mind for filtering, is where the conveyor belt should be utilized. The electric pump, when placed on a machine, will transfer fluid to the block adjacent to the face it's on. You can configure it to import or export fluids. Pumps can accept fluid filters, which we will talk about later. The fluid regulator is sort of the equivalent to a robot arm for fluids. It can transfer fluids, but has two useful modes: supply exact, which will transfer the amount of specified fluid per tick if available, and keep exact, which will make sure the exact amount of fluid in the attached machine is being kept. Every cover mentioned so far can accept filters for items and fluids, which can either whitelist, allow, or blacklist, prevent certain items and fluids from importing and exporting. Basic filters only allow direct filtering for specific items and fluids, while advanced filters allow you to set conditions for filtering, including full support for regex expressions and NBT data. Finally, using left or right click, you can configure item filters put in robot arm covers to work with specific item quantities. Ender fluid link covers are GregTech's Ender tanks. Each cover sends their fluids through a frequency defined by an 8-digit hex code, 0 to 9, then A to F for each digit. That gives you 4 billion channels to work with. Ender fluid link covers work as long as the chunk is loaded, regardless of distance or dimension. You can check the list of Ender fluid link frequencies in the terminal. The digital interface cover can show useful things like the status and progress of machines, or the amount of fluids stored in a super tank without you needing to open the GUI. It can be upgraded to a wireless digital interface cover in order to link the cover and machine to a central monitor, a highly configurable multi-block structure which is primarily used to keep track of processes around the base. More info can be found in the GregTech Community Edition unofficial wiki and the terminal. Voiding covers can be attached to GregTech machines, crates, or drums. They will void stuff you don't need. For machines, it will only void the output slots. The input slots are ignored. You can also attach a filter to them to specify what you want to void. An advanced version of the cover is unlocked at MP tier. It enables voiding above a set threshold, which is great for overflow control. To enable voiding, you have to right-click the cover with a soft mallet. Infinite water covers will supply an unlimited amount of water to the machine it's attached to, at a rate of 16 buckets per second. You can attach this cover to multiple faces to increase the water production rate. This is primarily used for water electrolysis to get unlimited but very slow hydrogen and oxygen production. You can put that cover directly on super tanks too. The shutter module cover will prevent any interactions from the face it's placed on. This means that you can't open the GUI from that face, use pipes on that face, transfer energy in and out of that face, or in any way interact with the machine on the face the shutter module cover is on, except for removing it with a crowbar. You should use shutter modules if you're building in a tight stop to avoid problems with pipes or cables of higher voltage.
The crafting table cover allows you to right-click the face you placed it on to open a GregTech Crafting Station GUI. The energy detector, when placed on a face of a machine, will output the amount of energy it has as a redstone signal. This can be useful in conjunction with a machine controller cover to turn off a machine when a battery buffer has X amount of energy, for example. A machine controller allows you to turn a machine on or off with a redstone signal. This is often used to control ABFs, which will continuously consume dust if unregulated. The activity detector will output a redstone signal if the machine is on or if the machine is off, depending on how you set it. The advanced activity detector will output a varying redstone signal based on how much progress a machine has made in a crafting recipe. Last but not least, the item and fluid detectors will send out a redstone signal based on how much of an item or fluid is in the machine's output slots. And that's all you need to know about GregTech covers and filters. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you haven't done it yet, subscribe and download GregTech from the link in the description. You can also check out more of these guides from the playlist linked in the description.